Yo, what's going on, weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to another PSO2 video. So, today's video is going to be the last of the catch-up videos I wanted to get done. It's going to be a pretty simple one. We're basically going to be going over units in our current endgame, what decisions to make, what to go after, what to worry about upgrading, what to worry about not upgrading, and all things in between. But before we jump into that, guys, if you're new to the channel, my name is Chrono. I cover PSO2 content primarily. If you want to keep up with this sort of stuff, appreciate to subscribe as we work our way towards I keep saying it, but I don't know if there's a number we want to work our way towards. Anyway, big number, get bigger. Let's go ahead and jump into this. So units are something that people kind of been a little bit apprehensive about, and I understand totally, just because there really isn't much power to be gained since Redum released. As always, we're on the Visiphone website. I'm going to just use this website itself for whenever we're looking at these things and show you guys how you can find this information on your own. Always do. That way, in case you want to figure something out, you don't have to wait for me to make one of these videos. So, with the release of Redum, we got a few new units, but most of the units aren't really substantial upgrades to what we already had. Keep in mind, we had Giant release right when we got the Gigantics. So, Giant armor was our previous, I don't say best in slot, but probably the closest thing you could say to it, with 2% all attack, 10 PP, and minus 20 HP, and of course the minus 50 all res. From there, we ended up getting a newer set, basically an upgraded version of that unit. And I say upgraded in quotations because it really isn't much better than the original one. We have Grius. Grius essentially is minus 40 HP. You gain 3 more PP, so it's 13 PP. However, it's still the same 2% all attack. And of course, the same amount of resistance down. So you don't gain any actual base damage, you're just gaining the extra 3 PP. There's also mentioned that, you do also gain an extra, what is it, 6 defense over the upgrade itself. However, you do lose an extra 20 HP to gain that 6 defense. Now, I don't know the exact damage calculations, whether that that 20 HP is worth the 6 defense itself, how much that 20 HP is worth that 6 defense. If the HP is worth more, if the defense is worth, I feel like the defense might be worth more. Usually with damage resistances and increased defenses, I tend to take a lot less damage and it feels a bit better versus just having more HP. So I feel like it is still gonna be the better choice overall, but that's anecdotal information. That's just my own experiences and not really based on any math. As far as unit choices go, if you were rocking somewhere in the lines of Giant beforehand, you're probably going to still be using your Giant armor, and the reason for that is Fixas. If you had Giant with Fixa, like I did, I was using, I believe, a rank 3 Fixa Performa, which increases my PP recovery. Which reduces my PP cost of my abilities. It realistically wasn't much of an upgrade to go after Grius. Giant has been around for a long time. We've got tons of them. We have had plenty of time to get tons of them. So realistically speaking, there's going to be more options for Fixas, which are going to be cheaper, versus the Grius, which was a newer choice at the start of Redum, and we really didn't have very many of them out. Of course, the Fix is going to be more expensive, and realistically speaking, the only difference was the extra 3 PP and the extra defense. Now again, the defense might have made a difference, but that 3 PP, getting more PP is nice, but only in the sense of being able to use that amount of PP consistently. What I mean by that is, if that a bit of PP doesn't afford you an extra attack under any circumstances, then that extra PP is basically placebo. It didn't actually do anything. You're still doing the same amount of attacks, you're still doing the same thing. There's just a little bit of extra headroom or overhead room with your amount of PP that you have available to you. Now, the real upgrades, I guess, or the closest thing you can see to them, are kind of the in-between units, so we'll talk about those next. You've got all these units here that we had from just from the base PS2 release. We've got the Vialto, Arma Sheza, and all these other ones that we have here. Pretty solid choices to kind of pair with Giant armor. I think one of the common ones was to pair the Quality armors with Giant if you didn't want to go triple Giant and have to deal with status effects. They do have upgraded versions of these. We've got the Vios armor, which I think is a great choice nowadays, to go along with Grius, or to replace one of your Giants if you were a triple Giant guy. Going with Vios is not a bad choice at all. You've got 8 PP, which isn't as much as Giant. It's only 2 PP loss, but you're gaining back that 30 HP, and you're only sacrificing 1% all attack, which is the best you can do right now when it comes to these units. So it's really not a huge deal in my opinion. It's still pretty solid. and it means that you're not getting instantaneously statused every single time you get hit. Pretty solid unit. Some also are opting to go with something like the Vidal armor, which is 45 HP and 1% damage resistance, to basically counterbalance the Grius armor. Or even counterbalance, honestly, the Giant's armor. If you're going to go this far and pick up something like Vidal, I would highly recommend upgrading to Grius if you're not losing out on fixes. So what about these fixes? Let's talk about fixes as well. We can actually pull those up here really quick. So preset abilities. So fixes. Fixes realistically are kind of like the icing on the cake when it comes to units. They're not as impactful as they are on weapons, but they are still really, really useful. You've got Fixa Guard, which is, I mean, if you really aren't spending extra money to get more defensive in most situations, unless it's kind of like your thing, it's a niche sort of thing. It might help you survive an extra hit when you're fighting like a Gigantix, but usually this is mostly ignored. What you're looking for in most situations is going to be Performa, Natura, or Enthusia. Now, in most cases, Performa is going to be your go-to choice. It's PP cost reduction, which is really, really nice. And as you can see, at level 3, it's already 3%. So going from 1, 2, 3, these all go up by 1% apiece. 3 is kind of like the cutoff of where it's like 1% or one level 1%. 4 only goes up by 0.5, and then 5 goes up by 0.5 as well. So for me personally, I cut off at level 3 when I'm looking for Performa. Now there are some classes, I believe, Force, that has natural PP recovery up, which is really, really nice. So stacking that natural PP recovery up with a Fixa Natura is not a bad choice. It just means that something you already do very well, you're going to do even more. Now, some still argue, Fixa Performa being the better choice there. Realistically speaking, they're both really good choices. Just because, your class already does something doesn't mean you have to go based on that specifically. You can still use, the general purpose choice overall. Enthusia really isn't anything that I've seen a lot of people kind of run after, just because it's active PP recovery. And in case you're not sure of how active PP recovery works, it's essentially any attack that you do that recovers PP, that increases the amount of PP that you're recovering. The weird part is that while passive PP recovery or natural PP recovery is active, technically so is active PP recovery. So if you do nothing, your natural PP recovery is happening. So as long as you're not like running around or sprinting or anything along those lines, your natural PP recovery is going off. If you're attacking something with like a normal attack, you're getting active PP recovery. But however, at the same time, because you don't cancel your natural PP recovery while you're gaining active PP recovery, both of those are going through. I know I've talked a lot about PP recovery here, but essentially the long story short is the two of these kind of not necessarily work hand in hand, but they work at the same time in a lot of situations. Basically, whenever active PP recovery is going, passive PP recovery is also going. However, not always, or you're not always getting active PP recovery when passive PP recovery is going. So while one's active during the other is not always active during the first. So there you go. You decide on what you want to go with based on your play style. I know some people that like the active PP recovery for very specific combos where they get a chunk of PP back at the end of their combo. That way they can go back into the combo. But usually the most expensive one's going to be Performa, followed by Natura, and then Enthusia. So you have to ask yourself kind of, what fixes do I have? What am I working with overall? Now, if I were you and you're someone who's rocking all Giant, or you're rocking 2-piece Giant and like another piece of somewhere else, and you've got fixes, the only thing I would highly recommend doing would be swapping out that last unit for one of these upgraded choices and maybe try to get a fix on them, because they're really not that expensive right now. I mean, it's going to cost you a few mil, which fixes usually do, but it's nothing in the range of like Grius armor at 7 to 9 mil for, for a Fixa Performa or something along those lines. When you're looking at Giant to Grius, upgrading just doesn't feel worth it, at least not now. Now I'm going to have a video talking about what I think the future plans are for the next few drops we're going to be getting with some new content, and we'll talk more about units there, because I really think that's where we're going to start to see something that might be worth upgrading. Other than that, realistically speaking, it's more about choice. As far as affixes go, you can affix your gear however you like, going all power, getting some extra PP, but it depends on the class that you're playing. And then of course, your units are just going to be depending upon what you're going for. But to cap things all off, because I know I've kind of gone on a bit of a tangent here and there, the best unit choices we have right now is, of course, Giant, if you still have your Giant unit that you had from beforehand. I'd say Vios. Vios is a really good choice just because it's got a nice mix of defense and you have a decent mix of attack. It's kind of like the run-of-the-mill middle armor itself. You could go triple Vios and not feel terrible, honestly. I personally wouldn't. I would at least toss in one of the Grians or Gias just because they're so strong. And then if you need to counterbalance some of the crazy amount of damage you're going to be taking, Vidal is basically the best defensive choice, in my opinion. While Valdun, or was it Vidalun? I can't read, obviously. While this has decent defense and has a chunk of HP, I don't think there's anything to be gained yet by HP gouging that hard. And by having the damage resistance along with the defensive option and the fact that it's only level 24 seems really, really good. That's another thing to keep in mind, guys, is if you're leveling stuff still, don't get rid of your old units, because if you can't use the new unit when you switch classes, it's gonna make things a bit complicated for you. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. If you have any questions, feel free to toss it in the comments. If you like the video, toss it a like. If you want to keep up with more, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Peace out.